Hi there, I'm Andrea Garvey and I'm so excited about this video today. So this one is all about stencils and I have in my hands my brand new stencils from StencilGirl and I cannot wait to share these with you. So StencilGirl is one of my favorite, probably is my favorite stencil maker. They are fantastic. And one of the reasons that I like them a lot is that they have so many different designs from artists. And so you can get on their website and see so many different artist designs and they're so cool. But I also love the quality. I love that you can cut them up into smaller pieces if you want and use them into different projects. Every single stencil I use for the last few years in my work has been from StencilGirl. And I was so honored when they asked me if I would design some stencils. So in my hand are the samples. And at one point too, I made this design. I sent it to them. They made a prototype and said, is there anything you want to change? But the quality was so incredible. There's nothing I wanted to change. They did such a perfect job with our first pass that we are ready to go. So I am going to do a few videos and some demos and make some art and I cannot wait. And I just wanted to let you know that I'm super excited. Okay, so I'm gonna turn my camera around and you're gonna check them out with me. All right, so I want to give you a little bit of background on how I came up with this stencil design. So I can't remember how long I have been drawing these sort of little magical, whimsical gardens, probably for years and years and years. And as I flip through some of my sketchbooks, the same shapes and style has always come through, whether I'm just doodling or I'm sketching or I'm daydreaming. I always seem to have this sort of magical garden. And I just wanted to show you a couple things that I created, and it's how I actually came up with these stencils. So this is just one I just found where, you know, it's that same like fun little arches. I love to use these rounded edges to either place a border along something or they're just like a fun shape. This is just a fun little shape that I came up with called doodle rose, and I have a bunch of them in some of my art. They're wild and some of them they're a little bit more easy to see. They're just a really fun flower. And then I went through this book from Ranger and it is their sketchbooks, Dilution sketchbooks, and I really, really like them. There's something about creating these marks over and over and over again in different ways. These are just a couple pages I found and I thought it would be fun to share with you because this is how I started thinking about, wouldn't it be fun to have a stencil like this kind of wild and fun garden? So I've got some petal shapes here, some rock shapes here, and all it was complete playtime. I repeat a lot of shapes and a lot of marks over and over, and then I see which are the ones that I'm liking, and then I'll take a lot of these shapes and I'll put them in my paintings. So when StencilGirl asked if I'd like to create a stencil for their incredible company, I was like, yes, yes, yes. I think I know what I want to do because I've been designing these sort of worlds now in many different ways, whether it's a painting, like this is a fun little class I did a couple years ago, but it's the same idea where it's this design where you can turn it. So it's a little fantasy, whimsical, abstract. So this was one of the designs that I thought, oh, this would be kind of cool if I drew out something like this on 3 different types of stencils. So these are just some of my play, papers and just fun. And I'm like, oh, could these turn into something really cool for designs? So that's sort of how I got inspired. It's going back to what do I love to do and what kind of shapes would I think would be really cool on a stencil for you to play with. So I went back to my sort of doodly gardens, and I'm going to show you a couple pieces that I finished, and I'm also going to do a little demo on how I use them. The larger piece is Garden Joy Large. So there's a large, there's a small, and a mini. So this one whole stencil, as you can see, I've used it a bunch with some of my favorite colors, but as just a one pull on a piece of watercolor paper using Nova acrylic paints. I did the one piece so you can see what it looks like with just the stencil. One of the reasons why I love StencilGirl so much, and I love these large ones so much, is that I could be working on a painting and maybe I just want to use these little doodle roses, or maybe I just want to use these little scales, or maybe I just want to use these hearts. And when you look at StencilGirl's collection of large pieces, you can get so many stencils out of one. And so when I was designing this piece in particular, I really wanted you to be able to turn it either way to have your design. I wanted to show you this one piece that I worked on. This piece right here is in one of my art journals, but as you can see, it could go either direction. What I did first actually was I had a background color on my page, just maybe a couple different blues. Once I put my stencil down, then I went to town with, oh my gosh, so much fun. Paint pens, colored pencils, Signo gel pens that I love so much. So one of my favorite things to do with stencils when I'm working on paper is to use it with paint pens. And when I'm working on a canvas, I'll just go into my canvas and just stencil over some little sections, a little bit here and a little bit there, just to give it some nice layering effect on my canvases. But I loved how this turned out. I spent hours just getting completely lost in the process. And that's what I want you to do when you're thinking about using these stencils in particular. I want you to use it as a starting point, and then spend some time and try different pens and just kind of get lost in going around the outsides, or adding a little bit here and there, or adding some more dots, or going around and filling in some of the negative space, and just creating your own little garden. I also did this journal page with the large one. So this is what I was talking about before, is that I'll just do a section of the stencil in some places. And then I use the smaller one. This is the small, and I made some little doodle roses here. So these are what I call my doodle roses. This piece right here, I actually used the stencil on, it was like vellum, a little bit like tracing paper. And then I did some matte medium on top. Then I went in and I added some white to it. And I just love this effect. You know, doing journal pages, you can also really get lost in the process of just adding more and more. You could paint over some of this. You could go back and you could add little parts that you want to on your page. That's why having a stencil with multiple little designs on it makes it really fun to be able to use. You can flip it over, you can do it upside down. It's all whatever you want it to be. And then this piece here is this piece of art that I had that had some work already on it, and I didn't like it. It was in my scrap pile. And here's what I love to do. I love to take art that I don't like anymore, and I put it in a box. And then when I have a little bit of time, or I'm not too sure what I want to work on next, I'll grab these little sheets of scrap. And I took this stencil and I put the whole thing down. And then what I did was I drew some of these rounded shapes that are on the stencil, and I just did some of them myself with cutting out little pieces. So I just really turned this into a more whimsical piece. It's a lot of collage on here. And even taking my Signo ball pen, I went and made similar shapes to my stencil, and I just did them freehand. So think about that too. Like, you might have some parts of your stencil where you really like it, but then try doing some of it freehand next to the part that you just stenciled. So this is the small size. These look like if you just were printing it out. Let me turn it around. Here's one I did in blue as well. All right, let me show you the mini, which is so cute. So the mini is a little tiny guy here, and it has some really fun, actually, let's just look at this one. You can see it better here. It has some really fun little elements on it, my little round shapes that I love. And then this is again, like another little mound and a little garden happening here. These are more like tulip style, and you get some more dots and some grass. So I made this tiny little card. You could do tags with this. Like, think of all the things you could do with just a small little piece. You could use this on a bigger journal page. You could cut this up into strips and use it again, but it also makes a really cute card. If you want to give somebody a little card, I went bananas with my paint pens on here. I couldn't even tell you where I started, but I have a feeling I started with this color and then I would go over that color in some other paints, and most of this is paint pen. I'm just going to show you a little bit of a demo on how I use these to paint with. I'm just going to do a demo on painting a stencil onto the journal page. And one thing I wanted to share with you is that if you ever have extra paint, I want you to use it up and use it on some journal page background. So this is just a very simple way of some purple and a little bit of white. And I took a foam brush and I went like this. And I did the same thing here with a white and a magenta. And then I can always go back to background pages that are already done if I have like an evening and I just want to relax and work on my, have a stencil and work on some paint pens. I don't have to worry about the background. I have some stencil brushes here. And I just wanted you to know, when I first started working with acrylics and stencils, I never had a stencil brush. My mom gave me these brushes. And I used to do all my stencils with a regular paintbrush. Like, I would just use like a little flat brush. This is just an angle shader, but something that was a little flat. And these worked fine for me. I did a lot of my stencils on canvases. So I knew that eventually I was going to either cover part of it up or work on different layers. So I am not a perfectionist when it comes to using stencils. I use it as a layer, and then I usually paint over it with either paint pens or different types of marks. Just to let you know, a little tip, if you want it to be perfect and you were working on maybe some furniture or a decorative piece, then I would invest in a couple good stencil brushes, but you don't have to use stencil brushes. And you could even use a makeup foam sponge and just dab some of your paint onto your stencil. There's many, many ways to use a stencil, and none of it is wrong. I don't want you to feel bad. I don't want you to feel bad if you get some extra marks on your page. I would incorporate those into your piece, into what you're doing. This is all about having fun. So I'm just going to grab a stencil here. This is the large one. So you could do so many designs on just these two pieces of paper if you wanted to. You could do the bottom of one or the top. You could turn it around and do it this direction. I also wanted to tell you, like, if you were working on a stencil for maybe furniture or something that was really important, you can tape off with masking tape some edges. Sometimes I'm just so slip-slap that I just forget, and then parts of the other stencils show up on my piece, and I don't care. But if you wanted it to be really special and you're working on something that you don't need this part of the design, then just put a little piece of tape like right here and right here. Not the whole thing, it's fine. So I am going to just put this down and grab a stencil brush. I'm just going to use this little guy, and I have some deoxysine violet here. And the thing about using stencils and a stencil brush is you want to get a lot of that paint off, actually, and you just go around on a scratch piece of paper or on your palette and just do a little circular motion to get some of the paint off, because otherwise the paint's going to bleed underneath your stencil. So let's just do a little piece here. And so when I'm using a stencil brush, I will also go in little circles. Once I have the part that I want done, I just pull it up like that, and there's my stencil. So the trick is definitely less is more on your stencil brushes, and on your regular brushes, you just want to go less. You can always darken your areas with paint pens or a little tiny paintbrush. Dip it back in and go in if you'd rather do that than doing too much and it smudges underneath. Is that even a word? Smudgets. Some of the things I like to do with my stencils are actually stencil on pieces of paper that I'm going to glue and collage down later. So let me grab another one. So this was the large. Let's grab those little roses. I love those roses. And I'm going to do similar. Oh, I just realized I had paint right there. I'm just going to go around. And so now this is a little piece that I would use later when I'm collaging, or if I've done a whole bunch of layers on here, maybe I would take that and I would rip it into little pieces like this and use that as part of my design later. There are so many things you can do. So this is a angle shader. I just want to do the same thing. So on the brushes, you don't have to go in as many circles as possible. All you want to do is make sure it's not got a ton of paint on it. Let's go with this little guy. I'll do those roses again. And it's okay, I've got a couple little extra dots. You know, wouldn't it be cool if you did these roses? This is from the larger stencil, this is from the small stencil, and you had all different types of roses on different types of paper. I mean, the amount of things are endless that you could do. So much fun. Okay, so that's the brush. And this is a brand new, never used, but I thought it'd be fun to experiment. I am going to use this makeup foam thing. I don't wear a lot of makeup, so I don't have these. My girlfriend gave them to me. But look how fun they are. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go buy some. All right, so there's my little foam dude, and I'm just gonna pull it up. And voila! So if you wanted to do a big one, and all of it like I did here, then what you do is you just tape down your stencil with a little bit of tape on either side, and you just make sure you are holding it down, and just go one little section at a time. But I want you to think of building up your page with different stencils and different sections. You know, just because it's one design that you see, there's many little designs inside of one stencil, okay? So you can break it up, or you can make one big one. All right, so let's let this dry, because if you use paint pens, you definitely want to make sure the acrylic is dry, because you'll ruin your little nibs if you just go wet on wet. So give it a few minutes. Right. So my little stencils are dry, and this is how I then would incorporate another layer onto my stencils, is with paint pens that I love. I love Posca pens. Most of my art courses involve Poscas, I believe, if I can remember. And I just grabbed some really fun colors that would go well with these purples. I also have the Signal Ball pen that I love to use for a bright white. I also have a Micron pen. These are all pens and markers that I love to use. They're permanent. I use them a lot in different things that I work on. And I just have them handy, usually in a little bucket when I have a journal page I want to go back to. So pretend this has lots of collage, and it has bunches of other paints on there, and I've got my stencils in a place that I want. So then what I would do next is I would go around, and in some areas I would maybe outline a little bit. It kind of depends on the mood I'm in, but what is so much fun is you can get completely lost in taking your stencils to another level. So this is a cream color. Let me just show you a whole bunch of different colors and ideas. This is a number 5. That was a number 3. And these ones I've had for a while. Sometimes you have to have a scrap piece of paper, and some of your scraps could end up being on your page, but you just want to have a scrap piece of paper so you can make sure that the paint has come through to the nib. So in some areas where you may have a little bit of a stencil, that showed up that you didn't tape down or you didn't want to see those marks, then you could take your paint pens and cover them up by doing some fun little design elements like that if you wanted to. Let me do it with this one. This is another number 5. And so every time I do this, I always have a scrap piece next to me. So I can take those little marks and incorporate them into part of the design. This is why it sometimes takes me hours to do a page, because I just have so much fun. All right, so that's one way to use the paint pens, is to incorporate little details around it, go around the outside. I also like to go into some of the negative marks, like the inside of this flower or the stripes on this circle, and use my paint pens and fill that in. So let's see, this is an older pink. Let's see, oops. So this is why I definitely, oh yeah, I made another little mess here. See, this is, I should be called the messy painter. But I go into some of the negative spaces and I'll add a little bit of color. Just like that. This green is always fun. So maybe I just make a little dot in those flowers like that. And you could even go into these little doodle roses and make a thicker outline. There are endless possibilities. The main thing with a paint pen is you want to make sure that your paint that you're painting on is dry. And this is paint, so this needs a minute or 2 to dry, otherwise it will smudge like that. So that was me, and I wasn't doing this little demo and I was working on it. I would just go back and maybe let that dry, or I would turn it into another shape. Something like that. You can do your lettering with paint pens. So some of the stencils are more solid, so I could go in and add little dots. Sometimes I will put dots like this on the end of my flowers. And I just want to show you what the white does too. So I love outlining in this white. So this white is a uniball. It's a uniball Signo. Let's see, am I saying the right thing? I'm pretty sure I am. It's a uniball Signo white, and I buy them in like a 3-pack on Amazon. You can get them in art stores. It's like a gel pen. The reason I like this white over Posca is I feel like sometimes the Posca whites aren't as bright, and that's just me experimenting. So I don't want to smudge everything because the things are still a little wet, but you could go into your, and then again, like have a little scrap paper like next to it, but you could go in and just do some really fun designs on top of your stencils. I want you to really think about using stencils as a way to add a layer on top of some work that you're working on. I don't want you to stress about if it's not perfect. There's so many ways that you could then work on top of that stencil once it's down in so many different ways. I mean, imagine this is all dry and I have my little, even this is my little scrap and I have those on there. I have some writing. Maybe I talk about my day. There's so many things you can do. I just want you to enjoy like the journey and the process of actually creating, because that's really what it's all about. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I cannot wait to see what you come up with.